You can have an intellectual understanding of a problem and not have a spiritual understanding of a problem. And because of that, you will most likely end up making the exact same mistakes. Context, I was watching Justin and Deontay's live, and this is something that stuck out to me.
And what ends up happening is that they see their mom, and instead of looking at the oppressive condition, because they don't even get the education to see this, right? They look at their mom and see lack.
Okay, and so how this manifests in real life is, let's say you have someone around you, it's a parent, someone, and you're like, I'm not going to be like that person. I know that I'm not going to be like that person. And then you grow up, you find yourself in the exact same or very similar situations, and you find yourself asking, like, how did this happen? Like, I watch this. I watch my family go through this. I watch my mom go through this. I watch my dad go through this. How did I run into the exact same issues? Chances are you had an intellectual understanding of the problem, but you didn't have a spiritual understanding of the problem. With an intellectual understanding, you can articulate where it comes from, where I saw this growing up. You've read the books, you've watched the movies, maybe you've written about it. I'll give you a solid example of that. You know the psychology behind it, and you can point out the pattern when it shows up. You have an intellectual understanding. I see this behavior, and I know I can clock it. Despite that knowledge, awareness, watching the people around you, knowing that, oh, this is something that I don't want in my life, you still find yourself in the exact same situation. You still find yourself saying yes when you mean no. You still find yourself feeling resentment. You still find yourself fearing disapproval. You still realize, or you might not even realize it, but there's no shift. You have not moved into liberation because you have not moved from awareness into embodiment. You might even be somebody who corrects others on the thing. Like, you understand the theory, but you haven't lived it, or you don't live it, or you don't understand the lived experience that caused it. You're looking at your mom or somebody and you're like, I'm just not going to be that type of person. By you not paying attention to the oppressive conditions that created that person, what were the ingredients that went into this cake that made this person who they are, instead of just operating under the assumption that, oh, they're just a bad person, or they're just this. Anytime you put just in front of something before a person, know that you are going the wrong way. But you're saying that this is the way that this person is. It's because, oh, they don't have enough ambition, or they don't have this, or they have a bad attitude. By you doing that, by not diving deeper into what were the conditions that actually made this person, a lot of times you end up falling into the exact same trap. So rather than operating on the assumption that your mom's just a terrible person who's irresponsible and whoop-de-whoop this, you should be looking at her childhood. What went into it? What messages did she receive that made her into the person that she is? What were the conditions that created this, so that I can sidestep them or go around or embody it? When we don't do that, we miss out on the spiritual understanding. A perfect example of this is going to be Jordan Peterson. Okay, don't come for me. Your girl fell down the right-wing pipeline like circa 2017, before it was officially a pipeline. Okay. And how I got sucked into it was, I was looking to like better myself, and just like, I was like, I need to grow up. I need to just like put childish things away. And I ended up stumbling upon his college lectures. So who Jordan Peterson is now is a monster, not what it originally started as. Not what it originally started as. Originally, he had a lot of lectures that he put on from his college classes that were specifically focused on understanding your personality and who you are. He ended up writing a book, and in this book, he wrote how addiction happens. He understood on an intellectual level the negative feedback loops, the reinforcing behaviors that kick you into a cycle of addiction. He could understand it on an intellectual level. What a lot of people don't know is that a couple years ago, Jordan Peterson actually fell into addiction of his own. I think it was like narcotics or something real heavy, but it was so heavy that he ended up having to be put in a coma to come out of addiction. Despite him having the intellectual knowledge of what addiction is and how it happens, he still ended up falling into that because he did not have a spiritual understanding. His intellectual knowledge didn't change the way that he moved, which tells you that it was a lack of spiritual understanding, which is very easy to do when you're operating under the assumption that someone is behaving or doing something just because that's just the type of person that they are. No. And so by him not doing that, he fell into the exact same thing that he wrote about. I firmly believe that Jordan Peterson is a monster today because instead of him taking that spiritual understanding that he now had, he ignored it. There's a lot of people, you have a huge audience, and he could have helped so many people if he was able to come out and say, hey, I don't know as much as I thought that I did. Here is what I know now. And here's, what actually went into this. Here's how I fell into this. but machismo and this is what happens when we don't have a spiritual understanding. He could have helped so many people by sharing that spiritual understanding, that spiritual wisdom, because there's too many people who are operating under the assumption that if somebody is a certain type of way and assigning like a moral value structure to it, it's because they're just bad. They're just this. They're just that. And in actuality, they're just human. And you have not paid enough attention to the oppressive conditions that led to that problem. If you want to avoid living like that, do yourself a favor. If there's someone or some entity in your life where you are looking and you're saying, I don't want that in my life, don't stop there. You need to develop a spiritual understanding of how that person arrived at that point. Understand the ingredients. That way, you can maneuver the landmines instead of ending up in the exact same situation, despite you being a completely different person and having a completely different set of circumstances. To avoid ending up in the exact same place, you need to pay attention and understand the landmines that created that person and not just operate under the assumption that they're just